Something in me changed after becoming a mother, and I can't go back. This isn't postpartum depression, it's something else. It's like my identity dissolved. I don't know fully who I'm becoming yet, but I know I'm not the same person I was before. And I've always been someone who observes more deeply before acting or articulating or coming to conscious awareness of it even. But I noticed these patterns, only later try to articulate them. So it was after giving birth twice, I experienced what I heard people refer to an ego death, which I could kind of relate to before, but in small ways. It's not like an ego like this arrogant front you're putting on. Ego is in like your identity, like the structure of who you think you are. And like I'd felt those smaller versions before, but nothing like this. Motherhood has been the biggest paradox of my life. If you know, you know, but it's like the most love I've ever felt, and also the most disorienting I've ever felt. And a paradox is in like it is dramatic and so ordinary at the same time. Like people do this every day, but internally it feels like everything is rearranging. The strange part is that it's both sudden and gradual. Like one day you're pregnant and the next you're holding a baby, and that's a very clear threshold. But this identity shift, like this ego death, happens very slowly, like erosion, like something dissolving quietly over time. The motivations that used to drive me just all of a sudden felt flat. Achievements for sure did not anchor me the same way. Socially, social roles started to feel like costumes that I was just putting on and wearing, but they weren't me anymore. Or I'd just be like showing up blank and just trying to like fit in or whatever. I don't know, just existing there. Even with other mothers, I don't know. It just felt lonely. This awareness can feel lonely, not because you're physically alone, but because these reference points that everyone else seems to use don't orient you anymore. And I remember hearing that all change carries grief to any degree. And that's exactly what this feels like, but not grief for something specific, but grief for a version of me who felt defined, or grief for that certainty, that direction. But then the paradox is like at the same time there's relief, because maintaining an identity takes energy and constantly reinforcing this is who I am, this is what I do. When that loosens, there's this space and less structure. So it can feel like drifting in deep space, heavy, quiet, vastness, like no clear coordinates. You're just floating out in space. Instead of trying to force myself into a new identity just to feel stabilized again, I started doing something different. I opened a note in my phone and I titled it Video Game Reality. Along this awakening, you come across manifestation, and so I was revisiting all these interests and things in my previous life. I decided to treat it kind of like the Sims game, which I never even really played when I was younger, but that was what I had in mind, was like, let me just create this life. Like, let me write it down, like what I might want, interests and roles, things that still feel alive. The things that didn't, I wouldn't write it down. And that way I can just revisit these previous parts of myself to see if it still resonates or not. Or did it belong to a version of me that was already gone? Some things were like a clear no. Some felt just kind of neutral. I don't have time for something that's not pushing me into a direction, like toddlers. Yeah. I felt a few that were like quietly alive again. The other thing that I did was I revisited frameworks like astrology and human design, and I really felt kind of guided towards the gene keys as well, which I had come across before, but I didn't really, it was kind of too much. But not to put myself into like a new box, but just to understand like my baseline, what may have always been there under all these adaptations, coping roles that I had taken. When your identity dissolves, your psyche is naturally looking for orientation. Motherhood is so disorienting. What I realized is that an ego death isn't an end of an identity necessarily. It's more like molting. The old skin is falling away, but the new skin hasn't fully formed yet. So you're more sensitive and more open and more undefined. Externally, life looks normal, and internally, everything is reorganizing. Sorry, I'm just like looking at my baby monitor. It's like, we'll be right back. Had one wake up from a nap. So I don't have this figured out. I think I'm still in the in-between. But what I do know is that I care less about achievement now and more about alignment, and less about who I'm supposed to be and more about what feels true. And the only thing that I feel certain about right now is living from my heart. That's like been the biggest lesson that I'm learning, because with all the like survival mode, like everything can just get kind of cloudy. So acting from that place, from my heart instead of expectation, this is where I am. Does anyone else recognize this place? I just wanted to say that.